Now step 5 is a little bit more complicated step. We need to use the result sets in step 5. So you say use the results. And how do we do that? What I intend to do is to create a collection of sales records as a list, in form of a list of these sales record objects. Okay, and then I create an instance of this sales record object for each row that is coming from the result set. I don't know if you really understand that, but let's go ahead and do it. So I'm gonna create a list object, a list of sales record. Okay, so each element of this list collection is an instance of this sales record class. Okay, so let's go ahead and declare a variable name for this. So we're gonna call this sales records. Okay, so this is a variable name for this list of sales record. Okay, the variable is not a variable, an instance of sales record, but is an instance of lists, which is going to hold sales record objects. Okay, I believe I've made a very clear, distinctive explanation. So I'm gonna instantiate that as a new array lists, because the list is an interface, and so therefore we can't instantiate an interface, but rather we can instantiate a class that implements the list interface, which is array list. And an array list is a very good candidate, which we are going to import from java.util. It's a good candidate for a list of this sort of this result set type. Okay, so we're going to put this result set in a loop. I'm going to say while rs.next, while we move through a cursor in the result set, because I want you to know that whenever you get a result set like what we have here in this results here, whenever we get a result set, there is a cursor that points to before the first row. Okay, when you call the next method, the cursor points to the first row, and so from there you can retrieve all these values from these columns. When you call the next method again, it points to the next row. When you call the next method again, it points to the next row, and so on. Okay, I want you to also note that this next method is a Boolean expression. You can check that out from the Java documentation. The result set has a method called next. Next. Here it is. So it moves the cursor forward one row from its current position. That's what I was telling you, and it returns a Boolean, which means true or false. Why does it return a Boolean? Let's see the details. It returns true if the new current row is valid. It returns false if there are no more rows. So, like example in this result set, when we call next, it moves to this row and it returns true. When we call next, it moves to this row and returns true. It keeps on returning true until we call next, it moves to this row and it returns true. And then when we call next, it moves to a row after the last row, which actually is not actually a row, so that it returns false because there are no more rows. So it moves away from the last row when you call next, and then it returns false. So with that knowledge in mind, we can stick in the next method in a while loop. As we keep on iterating the while loop, we keep on invoking the next method. And you know how a while loop works. Whatever goes here must return true for the loop to iterate. When the loop iterates and comes back, this must be invoked to return true. If it returns true, the loop iterates and so on. So with that, we can move through the rows of this result set individually. As we are moving through it, we can now be retrieving the values that are in the rows from the columns. All right, so let's do that in the next step.